jumping into data virtualization, a look back here. So just to start off, because I know data virtualization is a pretty, pretty topic that has a lot of definitions. A lot of people have some misunderstandings of what data virtualization does. So we wanted to start off with a common definition of what data virtualization is. So, to start off, it's an approach to data management that allows an application to retrieve and manipulate data without requiring the technical details about that data. So if a user uses an application, they can sort of access the data source without having to build the connection and build the abstraction layer themselves to be able to use that data. It sort of does that for you. The other piece is, unlike traditional ETL processes, data remains in place. There is no data movement when it comes to data virtualization. It is real-time data you're accessing from the source system without having to replicate it or move it into a different access layer to be able to use it. And then lastly, these solutions resolve differences in source and in the client application in terms of formats, semantics, and they provide various abstraction and transformation techniques to be able to do that. So there's a lot of behind the scenes transformation that's happening from the source system to how it's being accessed in the client tool to make that access performant and of high quality. Just a quick definition of virtualization as we get started here. And so when we look into the history of this space, the space has sort of started from the 2000s, mostly focused on on-prem enterprise environments. You had vendors such as Composite Software, which got acquired by Cisco, and then eventually got acquired by TIBCO and Denodo. That sort of started this space. They were the early pioneers in the data virtualization space. Then major platform players saw the value and got invested in it. This is a Forrester Wave report from 2013, and you can see vendors like Informatica, IBM, and SAP all became invested in data virtualization, providing it as part of a broader platform within data management for organizations. And then more recently, in the late 2010s, with the rise of data lakes and data lakehouses, you've seen a lot of new approaches to data virtualization, which come up in the form of analytics query accelerators, and some of the vendors that are there, those like Dremio and Starburst and Databricks. So I want to call on Amit here, because someone who's sort of been in this space and has seen the evolution over the past 20 years of data virtualization, to provide some commentary on this space, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what he sees in looking at data virtualization landscape over the past few years. So Amit, jump in and provide a perspective here.
Thanks, Will. Great to be here. Good morning, everyone. So I think from my perspective, data virtualization early on started off to allow enterprise IT teams to publish data from hundreds of different enterprise applications. So usually most of these enterprise applications were running some sort of relational databases, but it was different types of relational databases. It could be SQL Server or Oracle or something else. And so virtualization started off its strengths being to be able to define logical views to make it easy for people to understand what data is, define permissions on who can access data, and have a very clean separation from physical and logical view of data. I think it was and remains a very successful approach for some use cases, but over time it has had to evolve. We already seen what has happened is over time that less and less data is in these relational databases, so the data ecosystem has changed. The users of data have also changed. Traditionally, it was data architects and engineers who needed access to this data, and they were serving it to other parts of the organization. Now it's the business users are very savvy, and they want to use it data directly, interact with it directly using their tools of choice. So the virtualization story has evolved over the years, from relational databases to, I think in a few years back, it was Hadoop-based ecosystem. Now we see these data lake query accelerators that are dominant because a lot of data is in systems like S3, structured and unstructured data. From our perspective, like even as this evolution has happened, there is one more stage left to go, and I think we'll talk about that today, which is being able to access data from other sources that are not just data lakes, where you still have to copy your data, but what about enterprise applications, things like NetSuite or marketing systems or Salesforce, etc. How do you get access to that data in a live fashion? And then the other set of thing that I think which is important for data virtualization is how do you make it accessible to other users, line of business users, and not just data engineers? So I think it's been a story of a lot of change, which continues on even today.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit. Great to hear your perspective on the space and sort of where you believe the opportunity is. So fun fact, in the research around this presentation and trying to figure out, what were some of the first pieces of research that came out on data virtualization, the first formal analyst paper that came out on data virtualization was back to January 2006. And the author was Noel Johanna. So I feel very fortunate to have, one of the pioneers that actually defined the space of data virtualization, presenting, close to 20 years later on sort of what the evolution has been like and what we see in the market today. Apologize for the pixelated view of the research paper. This is the best I could find online with Forrester working with them, but I wanted to call that out. So if you look back at the history, Noel was one of the first analysts in the industry to start covering the space. And so if you look at how data management has evolved, and whether you call modern cloud native data technologies, whether you call it the modern data stack, you've seen an evolution from the data platforms to the tools that are being used for integration, ELT, to data governance, storage, transformation, and the different uses of the data across BI or different data workspaces. There has been a lot of technological advancements and evolution from the vendor perspective of what are the different technologies that we use at each layer of data management space. But one of the things that we haven't seen this sort of new wave of vendors that are providing a cloud native approach to data virtualization. And so that's been an interesting occurrence that we've been witnessing in this space, that you've seen all of this momentum in data management around different layers of the stack. But for some reason, data virtualization has not had a play in there. We haven't had the same set of vendors that are approaching innovating in this space. And so we thought that's an opportunity, but also it's interesting to understand why that is. And so when you look at why, I think a lot of it comes down to the vision of data virtualization has always been one that seems magical, right? You have this single platform that's able to provide live data access across a variety of different technologies that you have where data lives across your organization. And a lot of customers and enterprises that have purchased and implemented data virtualization have had similar feedback to what Steve Jones has here in a Medium post that he published back in 2021, is they don't actually like virtualization because they've actually used it. And so this has been, something that we've seen in the market quite a bit, is a lot of the organizations that are maybe oversold on data virtualization as this single platform that can solve sort of any data access problem or analytics problem across the organization. They've run into a lot of challenges in actually the implementation and use of these technologies. And despite a lot of bold claims and a lot of promises that have been provided to them by different vendors in the space, that they actually haven't lived up to the reality in the actual use. And so if you look at that, some of the challenges that we see or we've seen in the market as we've looked at it and approached it has come down to, these three things. It's one, around the intended audience. So virtualization has always been focused on very technical corporate IT teams. There have been little done to make it accessible by business users and to add any self-service capabilities in the virtualization layer. Access layer, yes, you can always use these technologies to access data, but in the setup and configuration of connections and things like that, it hasn't really been usable and accessible by anyone except corporate IT. Connectivity, as Amit referenced, has always been a challenge here. I think, for these traditional structured databases, relational data, on-prem relational data sources, it's been great because that's kind of the foundational footing that these technologies were built off of. But as this space has evolved, the ability to connect to SaaS applications, cloud storage, non-relational data sources like NoSQL, limited connectivity in that sense, and it's challenged with these technologies, being able to access data that these businesses rely on for day in and day out use. And then from a deployment and management perspective, similarly, great for on-prem centric environments and workloads and environments where the analytical requirements are slow changing. But as organizations have moved to cloud native architectures and SaaS being sort of the common deployment model across different technologies, it's been hard for these vendors to keep up and for these technologies to keep up. So these are some of the common challenges that we've seen across the landscape in terms of where data virtualization hasn't evolved or hasn't been able to meet the market need for where customers are today. Yet, problem of timely data still exists. So we did a study of over 500 data and IT professionals at the end of last year, and we found that the same problems are still there. Data requests take too long. Data management is too much of a time-consuming function for IT. They're constantly responding to different business requests for data, and still business departments and business users don't have data at the timely fashion that they need. It always takes hours, days, weeks, and even months to get access to the data they need to run their business. And so the challenge of timely data, both from the business side and from the IT side, still exists. And so there's still an opportunity to innovate in this area and provide better solutions to the market. So when we look ahead, what we believe at CData is that successful integration requires, a approach that blends both live data and replicated data. One of the challenges in the market is that a lot of the vendors have this sort of singular view of either data virtualization and live data or ETL, ELT and replicated data. In reality, organizations need a combination of both. They need live data access via virtualization when they need to, and they need to replicate and move data for different reasons and different use cases across the organization. One without the other is incomplete and doesn't solve the needs of an organization. And they need to be able to do this across any source of data, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, or in a SaaS application, and have a consistent layer of connectivity that's able to do that. So they can, make sure that the data they're getting access from these different areas is always in a high quality, high performant connector. And so when we think about live data as an access pattern, it's essentially data virtualization. It has the same components as the definition I provided earlier. You can access data without understanding the technical details of the underpinning systems. Data remains in place. You're not actually moving the data. And there's a lot of abstraction that goes into this live data access to make it highly performant and high quality. And so I wanted to pass to Amit to talk through, this is really the secret sauce of CData. It's the ability to provide access to a wide variety of data sources in a common SQL-based access layer across a variety of different client tools and protocols. So Amit, would love to call on you to talk through sort of our approach here at CData to this and how we've been able to do this across a variety of different sources.
So I'll keep this very short. So one of the challenges we see with disparate data sources, like of course you might think like all of these data sources have APIs, but APIs are very, very inconsistent. They could be REST-based API, SOAP-based API, or some sort of a protocol API like protocol buffers. They are all across the different data formats like JSON, XML, CSV, how you authenticate. All of that is very fragmented. And so what we set out to do was to bring some consistency to this world. And one of the things that we thought of was, if you think about data operation, they all tend to be very similar. You are either filtering data, sorting data, grouping data. These primitives have existed for a very long time, and they're all part of SQL. So SQL is a very good declarative language in working with data. And so what we have done at CData has standardized access around SQL. We make all these APIs look consistent. And the beauty of SQL is that it's not just well understood by the industry and data engineers know it, but every single tool that was built knows how to use SQL. So even if you go back and bring in Excel from 1995 or something like that, it knows how to work with SQL using ODBC. So I think SQL being the standard and how you work with data and bringing that back to this fractured world of APIs is what we have been successful at doing and what makes our products a little strong in the market.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit. And so as Amit mentioned, our focus is providing this SQL-based standard of connectivity across innovation patterns. So we're focusing on data virtualization today and live data today. Our connectors provide that live data access using SQL as the standard to be able to access data across a variety of different sources. But we also leverage this to provide connectivity for running ETL, ELT workloads, whether that's in our ETL ELT product Sync, but we also provide connectivity to a variety of ETL ELT vendors out there in the market, vendors like Matillion and Informatica that provide their own tools. And so we recommend using those technologies as well. So we have this standard of connectivity that's allowing us to provide a standard across both of these access patterns, live data and replicated data. And that's been a big, it's been the foundation of sort of data management and where we're approaching the market from moving forward. And so as we double down on live data and virtualization, there are different organizational needs for how they need to access data in this live pattern. So, the pattern that we've seen over the years is, a single data source, maybe Workday, into a single app or system that they're trying to access data from Tableau. So Tableau doesn't have native connectivity to Workday. And so there's a broad need in the market if you have your HR financial data in Workday to provide, departmental or organizational reporting into Tableau through that live connection. There's also, as organizations have, built up a number of different SaaS applications or cloud sources across their data ecosystem, the ability to sort of provide this many-to-many live connection across sources and client tools. And client tools are not only BI and analytics tools, they could also be having a live view of data within a Salesforce application. There has been a growing need to provide a central platform that provides this single watering hole almost that provides all of your data sources that you have across your data ecosystem in your organization to be able to connect those, blend those, and provide them back into the apps that people need to access them in this live fashion. And then, this enterprise scale data virtualization need isn't going away. That's been the sort of foundation of, how these vendors have approached this space over the past 20 years. And, there is still this massive need for large scale enterprise-wide deployments of data virtualization. We still believe that's a massive need in the market and one that is probably ripe for an innovative new approach there. And so that's still very much a large market in this space, and one that we see as growing as well. And so for us, we approach these in different ways. So we have drivers that are essentially the foundation of the company. They're the connectivity that powers all of our different products. So individual drivers across over 300 systems that provide this live connection from any source system to any client application tool, whether that's Tableau or some homegrown system. And then through our Connect Cloud product, we're providing this many-to-many. So it's a central point where we packaged up all of our connectivity from a SaaS perspective that are focused on cloud native or SaaS technologies, and being able for users to have that single place where they can build connections to those different sources, build derivative data sets off of those, and then provide a live connection from them to the client tools that they need. And then we're also, in working on an approach to enterprise scale data virtualization that, we won't be sharing today, but we do believe there's a massive market opportunity there, and one that we're approaching as well. And we'll have more information on sort of how we plan to approach that in the near future. So, Amit, maybe talk a little bit about, what we're doing with Connect Cloud and how we view this as kind of a distinct need in the market that has come up more recently with the rise of SaaS.
So I think when we think about Connect Cloud, what we set out to achieve was some of the challenges that we've seen in the past with data virtualization. One, ability to access a larger variety of sources. So that is definitely much more beyond than just the relational and data warehouses where other solutions could do, but all the SaaS applications or NoSQL applications and things like that. Second, being able to bring data virtualization techniques to a broader user base, line of business users, and all their preferred tools of choice, whether it be Excel or Power BI or Tableau, being able to seamlessly access easily virtualized data in those tools of their preferred tools. And then the third, I think what Will talked about is being able to blend this notion of replicate data with live data, and do that seamlessly. So it, one thing when people think about connecting to live data, especially when you're working with SaaS applications, is the performance there. Or so I think one way you could achieve that is by blending the use cases where you can seamlessly replicate data when needed, but work with live data as when you need real-time access. And so we have brought all of those three approaches to Connect Cloud, and I'm really excited. And you will see some of those elements in Mike's demo shortly.
Thanks, Amit. And so some of the problems we're trying to solve here are the ones we talked about already. So, from an IT perspective, removing this mindset that every request for data requires a new data pipeline to be built. If every single time we need access to a new data set or new form of data and we need to build a pipeline off of that, leads to a lot of technical debt across the organization and a data pipeline infrastructure that's impossible to maintain and even move forward in any case. There's also, when replicating data, there's also oftentimes some challenges when it comes to data security, data governance, and when you're replicating data into other systems, there's always cost issues of doing that. And then, as we talked about with the research we ran, there is challenges on the IT side when business is reliant on every new data request for something from IT to be done. There needs to be some sort of framework where IT can provide business a self-service process and set of technologies that allow them to do some of this work on their own. And then from a line of business perspective, it's just being able to get to your data faster in a more agile manner from the tools and systems that you need to. Also providing stakeholders with this instant ad hoc visibility into data that are in SaaS apps in a familiar tabular format. So being able to access data from Salesforce, from Workday, from NetSuite in a spreadsheet-like or tabular interface and do ad hoc analysis off of that is incredibly valuable and could be almost a staging ground that then leads to data pipeline development. And then for them, removing this over reliance on IT so they can move faster and not have to wait around when IT is ready or able to be able to get data in the hands of the teams that they need to. And so this is the overview of the Connect Cloud product, and I'll pass it back to Amit to talk through sort of how we've architected this platform and why it's architected in the way that's meant to address some of the challenges that we see amongst these organizations that have cloud native stacks.
So I'll keep this very short. I know we're behind time already a little bit. So I think just in summary, what I'll say, the most exciting thing about Connect Cloud is, as Will mentioned, it's a cloud native platform. What that allows us to do, it's a microservices based platform. So what it allows us to do is to innovate at a faster pace than ever before. You would see we have added all of the CData connector that are already very strong and have been used in the market by a lot of ISVs. So some of the virtualization capabilities that are in Connect Cloud come from virtualization capability, the SQL-based abilities inside the CData drivers themselves. But beyond that, being a multi-tenant cloud-based platform, it brings all of those benefits, making it easier for business users to approach. There's no infrastructure to deploy. You can get started with a quick browser-based session. So all of that, and the ability for it to scale. So most organizations' data needs occur at different times. For us to be able to build a multi-tenant architecture where we can scale it so that when one client's needs hit a peak load, the others are not at the same load, which allows us to have overscale the entire infrastructure to a point where we can cater to those needs very well. So I think you will see a lot of that in a few in the sessions from Mike. So I'll keep this short and pass it back to Will.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit. That's a reminder that I need to move a little faster through this session. So last slide here for us is just, so how are the ways of removing these traditional pains with Connect Cloud? Intended audience. So this is a user experience, as we'll show shortly, that's intended for business users. And we want to have a blend of self-service data access, but also with centralized governance. From a connectivities perspective, we're packaging up all of our pre-built connectors into this platform and offering them as a SaaS service, and also have the ability for users to build custom connections with our API connector that Mike will be reviewing shortly. And then from a deployment and management perspective, it's a cloud native SaaS architecture, we have elastic scaling compute. So the idea here is this is much faster to deploy and easier to manage on an ongoing basis.